this special location in Iowa, American, and Christian history. St. Paul, Minnesota is where I call home now, as Charmayne mentioned, but my roots are actually here in southwest Iowa, having been reared in Preston during the 1970s and 80s. And one of my fondest memories with my family is actually from riding with my father and my brother along the sun-kissed Lost Hills of Fremont County during 1984's registered annual Great Bicycle Ride Across Iowa, better known as Rag Ride. So very, very special place here just from a personal standpoint, because it was just a sun-kissed day. I had not been to this part of the state before, even though I grew up not too far away, and the beauty was just quite magnificent. But kind of an unfortunate event really marks the origin of my journey that has led me here today. And that is, a little over a year ago, my hometown attained national attention after 5 Preston High School students posted a photo of themselves on social media dressed in Ku Klux Klan outfits while waving a Confederate States of America flag and burning a cross. And this act, while disgraceful in isolation, revealed a larger, uncomfortable question of how could this happen in southern Iowa, a stronghold for Underground Railroad activities and the commitment to preserving the union of the states. Indeed, Iowa provided more Union Civil War volunteers per capita than any other state at that time. And the Christian sacrifice required to bring enslaved peoples to freedom via the Underground Railroad stations in Tabor, Lewis, Quincy, Brentnall, Keosauqua, and other towns and villages around Iowa required incredible courage. Love of thy neighbor and love of thy stranger could not have been easy to practice when fugitive slave laws and bounty hunters meant the possibility of violence persistently hung in the air and sometimes lashed out with a merciless strike. The reality of God's creation of all peoples on earth, slavery not being consistent with the teachings of Christ, and the Gospel's breathing peace on earth and goodwill to men provide the roots for the theology of Reverend John Todd and the Underground Railroad conductors. The appreciation of the Golden Rule and the application of it in the treatment of other races called Underground Railroad communities like Tabor to action. The respective calls of Martha Todd, the Gaston, Garner, Adams families, and hundreds of other players in Fremont County were imperative for the safety and success of the mission. God's overarching call for us to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with God, as stated in Micah 6:8, manifested itself in the particulars of the Tabor community's care for the runaway slaves and work for racial equality. The good tree of Tabor bore good fruit. And God's eternal, everlasting love provided them the courage for this to become. John Todd stated in his Judgment of the Oppressed sermon, "The oppressor relaxes his grasp only when compelled to do so, and God interposes in behalf of the weak, the oppressed against the oppressor." The words of Jesus and spirit and life could not have sanctioned such a system of oppression and crime as slavery. The seamstress darning clothes, the doctor administering treatments, the transport smuggling extra cargo, the children foregoing food, the lawyer interpreting statutes, and the abolitionist embedded in slave search parties providing misinformation, and the innumerous quiet acts that went and remain unknown, remain known only to God. Rootedness in God provided the foundation for each of these actors to fulfill their respective roles in helping compel the oppressive system of institutionalized slavery to vanish from the U.S. Returning to the topic of my hometown, the family of one of the Creston High School students in the viral photo wrote an open letter of apology and asked for forgiveness for the pain and harm it caused. The community of Creston responded to the social media incident by suspending the 5 students from extracurricular activities and initiating a series of discussions within the school system and greater community around welcoming and entertaining a stranger. For there always lies the possibility that in doing so, one is entertaining an angel. These are some of the roots of healing for the Creston community, a way to become stronger than before, a way to become more loving than before. John Todd and the people of Tabor provide the gift of witness to the power of a community rooted in God's love. Sometimes, when it's unclear how to move ahead, as it can seem at times in this messy world, it's best to start by revisiting our roots. What does God call us to do while we dwell on earth? And which communities and individuals are examples from the past that can help inform and illuminate ways forward today? This church and the Tabor Civil Bend community's actions in living the Golden Rule provide an abundance of lessons for us today. God's love for us calls us to help foster love within our communities and the greater world around us. The community of Tabor, along with sister communities sprinkled throughout the Underground Railroad network, cultivated the roots to bear fruits of righteousness and justice for the enslaved peoples, for the least of these. From Psalm 37, verses 30 and 31, the mouths of the righteous utter wisdom, and their tongues speak justice. The law of their God is in their hearts, their steps do not slip. Thank you, Tabor, for the blessing of righteousness rooted here. Thank you for this enduring witness of God's love. Amen.
Thank you, John, for that. I developed a fascination with people that were talking about the book Gilead. The first person that mentioned it to me is John Brentnall. He was very aware of the Iowa author Marilyn Robinson. Then Jim Harmon, who some of you met when he visited here with his wife Bonnie. He mentioned it to me. Now Reverend Scott Jones of my church, in First Central Congregational Church, UCC in Omaha, is deep into that same book. I'm suggesting that we might here in Tabor do a book study on this at some point. We'll talk a little more about that. Reverend John Todd, for those of you who don't know much about the book, was the basis for the abolitionist preacher and grandfather of John Eames, the main character in Marilyn Robinson's book. It won a Pulitzer Prize. It was written in 2004. For those of you that don't know the history of John Todd, and I am certainly not an expert, but He was born November 10th, 1818 in West Hanover, Pennsylvania, my home state. He was the second son and fifth child of Captain James Todd and Sally Ainsworth Todd. The Todd's ancestors were Scotch-Irish and Presbyterians, and Todd grew up attending a Presbyterian church. He was an early graduate of Oberlin College in Oberlin, Ohio, and he graduated the seminary class of 1841 and 1844, respectively. In the 1850s, John Todd moved west to this area to help start an Oberlin-like school on the Iowa frontier. He was one of the founders of Tabor, this community in southwestern Iowa, and this Congregational church, which he served as a pastor for more than 30 years. Reverend Todd's home, which is still standing here in the town, off the square, served not only as a station on the Underground Railroad, complete with concealed rooms in which escaped slaves hid until their next ride arrived, but also as a storehouse of weapons, ammunition, and other supplies for radical abolitionist John Brown. Marilyn Robinson's fiction work, Gilead, is an eloquent form of writing, and perhaps proof that fiction might be, whatever else, an exercise in showing the capacity for imaginative love or sympathy or identification. She made an atheist reader, like the person whose review I read, say that he felt capable of identifying with the sense of a fallen world that is filled with pain and sadness, but also suffused with divine grace. Marilyn Robinson herself was a Calvinist, and her spiritual sensibility is richly inclusive and non-dogmatic. There's very little talk about sin or damnation in her writing. There's a lot of talk about forgiveness and tolerance and kindness. The reviewer said, hers is the sort of Christianity, I suppose, that Christ could probably get behind. The reviewer also claimed, I'll never share her way of seeing and thinking about the world and her place in it, but her writing shows the value and beauty of these perspectives. And the writer also claims to be more drawn to Robinson's Christian humanistic thoughts than to the Dawkins, Dennett, Hitchens, and Harris school of anti-theist or anti-God fighting talk. In this transitional period of reclaiming our strong heritage here in this community, it's important to remember our roots, our heritage, and weave a new tapestry of thought and discussion as to how to maintain our strong roots and social awareness in creative ways. May the God of all creation and the teachings of Jesus Christ guide us in our endeavors to proceed in growing the connections to maintain our presence here in the local and larger communities. Amen.